inspired you to pursue a career in the mountains, and how did your personal journey lead you here?
I really feel like I had no choice in the matter. Since I was like 7, I would just stare at the mountains and like that was it. There was no question about what I was doing. Like, I wanted to go skiing when I was like 7, but then as I got older and older, I'd like see the mountains of Front Range when I was in high school and literally sit in math class and look at the range and be like, I want to go there. And we'd start, then I could start driving and just felt this complete like expansive, like, oh my God, you go up the first mountain, you go up Flat Top, then you're like, I'm gonna go up O'Malley Peak, and then you're like, oh, I'm gonna go up Ptarmigan, and then just like you get to the top of Ptarmigan, then you look back, you're like, oh my God, look at the Homicide Peaks, look at those peaks. And it was just like every time you'd get up, you'd see further and further back. And it was just this very expansive feeling of like, oh my God, how much experience. And that's when I became obsessed when I was like 16, of like, how much experience can I cram into my day, my minute, my hour.
Were there any pivotal moments or challenges in your life that shaped your philosophy on self-mastery?
Yeah, lots of stuff. I mean, all that together. I mean, you have the daily grind, so to speak. Like, I remember just minimizing my work hours to maximize my time in the mountain hours. And, I graduated when I was 98, and that was the best thing ever. I just literally moved from Anchorage down to Girdwood, and the season passed, and I'd work evenings just at the restaurant, and just so it was like the daily thing. Like it was like I treated it like a grind, treated it like a job. But basically it was 5 years where and I just ramped it. I had a bunch of sponsors. I was traveling around doing like these world championship events, and pretty convinced I had cracked the code on life and all that. And then I kind of had an Icarus moment, flying too close to the sun. It was 2003. And then then I fell into, no, it wasn't a depression. It was definitely a state of angst. And then secondary, I kind of was in that up until 2006. It was a whole bunch of stuff. I met the Canadian girl and ran off and moved to Canada and extricated myself from Alaska and Girdwood. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. But this heli crash I had in 2006 was pretty pivotal in that it was literally the first. I'd always like prided myself on like how many near-death experiences can you have, like, because you're flying down a mountain or hiking a mountain or like some ridge top that's all no fall zone. Just spending time in the no fall zone was very empowering, because you come back to the real world and you're like, oh, this is nothing, this is easy. But this heli crash in 2006 was the first time where it was somebody else's decision that had led to my near-death experience. Everything else, it was like, oh, I got there, and I'd watch other people make experiences that got themselves into death experience, if you can call it that. So that was it. And then so in 2006 it really snapped. I was like, oh my God, like, what am I doing? I had this like weird 3-year thing, and it was very what's the word, not cathartic, I don't know, inspirational sounds like the wrong word, but I was like, holy shit. Because then at that point I was like, what am I going to do? I could die at any second. So that's when we actually decided to move to Whistler, of all things, because of all things I wanted to do was go downhill biking in Whistler. And I was like, oh my God, let's just move there. And it was one of these where you didn't realize you could do it until you just do it. And then we did it. Anyway, that was a while ago. That was pretty fun.
How did you transform your own life before deciding to help others do the same?
I'd always kind of been on this self-mastery path. I was very, I guess, astute and aware of like drinking and stuff at a young age, in my teens, early 20s. Well, from 19 to 21, I drank a lot, but I still kind of I drank less than others. And I would still be like, I don't want to be hungover tomorrow. Actually, well, there's a time where we prided ourselves on being hungover and still going out and doing it. Like going to climb the mountain the next day, or you'd earn your beer. So like, you got 1 beer for every 5,000 feet you climbed, up until 5,000 feet, and then it was unlimited. But the thing is, it was a natural stopgap, because as soon as you climb 5,000 feet, that's a fair amount of effort in the winter. So you couldn't even drink 5 beers. You would like have 2 or 3 and be done. I mean, that's just signs of alcoholism, if you're just like creating little things for yourself to not drink 10 beers or 20 beers. But in general, accountability, action, and decide to arrive, like having your own accountability to yourself. And like I said, like the mountains are the purest not the purest. You have the mountains and the ocean. You have essentially any natural environment. The mountains happen to be the context I liked, but I've also seen the same response. The ocean's different though. The ocean is alive. The ocean is alive and it will kill you. The mountains aren't alive, but they're in that they're indifferent to you. There's kind of a difference. And but being accountable for your decisions to get you through the thing, like, that's it. And then if you can practice creating your own accountability in these places, you should be able to backtrack it out back to the real world.
What are the key principles or techniques that form the foundation of your self-mastery teachings?
I don't know if you'd call them teachings. Maybe notes to myself, notes to self. I like to create problems to solve rather than have problems created for me. So like if you're constantly on the forward momentum of like, oh, I want to create this big badass problem for myself. Like, oh, I'm going to train for a marathon, or I'm going to train to climb a mountain, or I'm going to train, or I'm going to try to build a house in another state. Like creating a big darn problem that's self-created. And then as you get into the details of the problem, you can't blame anyone but yourself. But in the end, it's the problem you wanted and you're solving it for whatever reasons you have versus having someone else create a problem. It's not to say by creating your own problems, no one else will bring problems into your pocket, into your presence. But you'll be more equipped having made practice problems for yourself to turn around and solve problems for other people. And then you need resistance. You need to create resistance. You can't just sit there in a void, in a vacuum, and think to just grow to fill the void or whatever. It's like a muscle. You got to work the muscles, create your own resistance in order to expand. You got to collapse the ego to zero and to clear your own mind, because once you can clear your mind, you make rooms for answers and insights. So the whole general point of all of it is to kill your ego, and that's a whole other subject going the other way. But then the result is you make room for answers and insight. If you can have your own ideas, they're good and great, and you can charge ahead on them, but you have to be able to stop and pause and be like, is this a good idea? Stop. Oh, what's another? Then you have to leave room. That's actually one thing I do. My wife's actually learned to deal with it, because I still do it. I'll like have an idea, and then I'll wholeheartedly think I'm going to do it. Say I'm going to do it maybe for an hour or a day or a week. And I'll feel like I'm doing it, like I am doing this, but then I'll still allow that, like, wait a minute, am I doing this? No, I'm not going to do that. And I like that. It seems to work. I don't know. And it used to drive her crazy, because I would have some harebrained idea, and she's like, oh my God, we're not going to do that. I'm like, well, no, we're not actually going to do it, but I'm just pretending we're going to do it. It took probably 15 years for her to figure that out. But anyway.
How do you define personal growth? And what steps can individuals take to embark on their own journey of self-discovery?
I would define personal growth as a positive expansion, expanding your own sphere of influence to make your life better, and then you got to make your life better before you can make anyone else's life better. Saying don't go try to change the world, you got to like make your bed first. I think that's true. Like, people sometimes fill their own void in the name of like charity or something. Not that that's intrinsically bad, but they might not be as effective if they haven't first helped themselves. Personal power, baby steps, has to become a lifestyle put into context of passion and a hobby. What steps can individuals take to embark on their own journey of self-discovery? You have to create your baby steps, and it has to be part of your lifestyle. Like, it's cliche, but like running or weightlifting are the most basic, simplest things you can do. Like, because you create, and there's two, you can take the running as far as you want, but it's easiest to be like, I'm going to do this race. And you'll sign up for it. The date might be 3 months out. Boom, there's your reason. Boom, you have your training plan. And you might be like, I'm going to get a PR on this race, or I'm just going to do it. You have your reasoning, whatever that the level of degree you want to compete in, but that's your day-to-day thing. So you got to put a thing out there, but then in the end, it's not about the race, because in the end, the process is what made you the person, and the race is just the thing that like got you through the process.
Can you share your thoughts on the role of mindset versus external circumstances in shaping a person's success?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at like your inner space versus the outer space, and are they really different? I mean, you dive into all the philosophies and quantum physics, I suppose. Stuff's like not there until you look for it when they break it down to the tiniest thing. And the scale of the smallest, tiniest things is the same ratio of scale to the gravity of the biggest things. So you're like, we're just kind of in this middle earth within the hologram looking one way or the other. And you see the responsive universe in little ways. Like I remember a book I had read, Robert Anton Wilson, Quantum, or what was it? Oh, Prometheus Rising, duh. And then it talked about the quarter trick. And basically you visualize quarters. I'm finding quarters everywhere, quarters. And I read this when I was like 20 or 21. And you practice finding quarters everywhere. So even if you're getting change at the store, oh wow, I got this change in the store, I manifested these quarters. Or I found a quarter here, I found a quarter there, like on the ground. And all of a sudden I would find them everywhere. I'd be walking down the street, there's one on the ground. Oh, I'd do this, there's one there. And every time you're doing it, you're just reaffirming to yourself that you made that quarter get there, because the quarter is the tiniest little piece of the universe that your feeble mind was able to manifest, right? So you're either delusional and you're attributing finding these random quarters to your ability, but it doesn't matter, because if you start quarter tricking, like that's what I did. I started getting sponsors and skiing and going like heli skiing and whatever. I just quarter tricked my reality. I quarter tricked my wife, my Canadian wife, into existence, I think. So it's as big as you want to go. But that was part of the Icarus failure, falling, is when you realize you can make anything you want within the quantum responsive universe. You can also make bad things, and you're like, oh my god, what if I can't stop thinking about this bad thing? And then I make the bad thing happen. I don't want that to happen, but apparently the universe is this objective thing. Oh, it's just going to read my mind and give me what I think I want. And that provided some issues. When I fled America in a paranoid fit, and I would like treated people, I mean, I still do this to some extent. I'm less crazy now than I was, but I literally, every person, every interaction with people, I would look at them as if they were divinely sent to answer. And it was all double speak. So I'd be like, hey, how was the weather today? And that person might have been talking to me, oh, the weather was fine, it was sunny and great, blah, blah, blah. And that's what they meant when they said it to me. But my interpretation would be the double speak of like, oh, what's the weather mean? Does that mean that my psyche is good and great? I would instantly extrapolate these things for good or bad into a whole string of assumptions. And that's not a recipe for success. This coffee's great. Oh, look at that. There's my wife right there. Inner space, are they different? That's the question. So the question was, can you share your thoughts on the role of mindset versus external circumstances? Yes, because then you have, I mean, you still have people coming at you, doing stuff. But then if you trick yourself into thinking that anyone who's coming at you for anything, maybe it's problematic, tell yourself it's not a problem. It's like, oh, this must be for my own good. You have to start making the assumption, which is called faith, making the assumption that the things are working out for your own good versus the assumption that it's going to be bad. So that's a whole nother subject.
For someone just starting their self-mastery journey, what's the first piece of advice you would offer?
Find something to obsess on, basically. And the more risk, the better. The more risk to your life, I would say, is better, because your decision-making skills have to become more refined in order to not die, which is a pretty high, you don't want to die, you'd think. So, I mean, you can obsess, and that's the extreme version, but someone could be really good at chess. You're not going to die if you mess up your chess game. And I'm sure you can find enlightenment and flow and cosmic understanding by playing chess or knitting or quilting or whatever. It just might be not as effective as context through which to learn. So that's the answer, is find something to obsess on. The more dangerous, the better. But I've got my limits. I look at, as soon as I saw people started doing these air sports, like I had the choice, and water sports actually, I had the choice of downhill biking and kayaking when I was like 20 to like, what do I get into? And I decided, like, kayaking, I was like, oh, that seems drowny. Like, I don't want to deal with the cold water. And then, so boom, kayaking. And then now you got these guys flying around the wingsuits and stuff. And I can see the obvious freaking potential of A, fun, and B, learning through the context of fucking life and death. but I don't need it. It's like taking a harder drug in order to get the high. Like, I don't need a drug that's that hard. I'm fine with these like lower level ones.
How do you suggest people overcome procrastination or self-doubt when pursuing their goals?
Sometimes you have to shrink the problem down to the smallest component and feel satisfied with that. So you might have some big giant project you put together for yourself, or someone to put together for you, and you're like, oh my god, like this is too much, I can't deal with this. And you got to break it down. And that's where I mean, you can use the running analogy. Oh, it's a marathon, put one step in front of the other. Where I actually prefer like construction. I do construction. I have for the last 20 years basically. And you have a big giant project, but the entire project might come down to installing this one nut or bolt or this one nail or this one piece. And even if the day's gone to shit and you're barely getting anything done, you know, at work or not, but you can still just do the one little thing. Like, I just did this one thing, boom, okay, it's forward progress. As long as you're making forward progress, you should be feeling good. Backward progress is really hard to justify to yourself, like, unless you're happy you caught the backward progress because you fucked up something up and you're fixing it. That's great, actually, because even though it feels like backward progress, it's in the long run forward progress, because if you let the boo-boo slip on and you found it a month later or 6 months later and it's way harder or impossible to fix, then that's a whole other problem. Oh, and also self-guilt can outweigh apathy. So if you're having trouble starting to do something, you can be like, come on, motherfucker, like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? And I'll do that. Like, I mean, I'll go. And then I'll be like, I'll allow myself, I'm like, oh my God, can I just lay on the couch for 10 minutes? Like, is that allowed? And then I will. And I'll just like, oh, and it's just, I do like, I'm good at like the 10 or 15 minute, just lay with your eyes closed. And you're like, okay. And then gradually, and you let your mind just whoosh, whoosh, like, let it be free. And then dink, the one little thing, you're like, oh, that's what I'm gonna do. And it'll like, and you're like, okay, ding, and then you like get up and you go do it. And so you can be charging forever, but it's also good to just take a day off. Like, I've got a friend who's in workaholic mode right now, and I keep telling him, like, just take a Sunday off, maybe, like, and just chill, because in that chill, refractory period, I guess you could call it, you gain insight and you gain clarity into what you're doing, and then you might actually be more efficient through your upcoming week versus just the constant da 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 da.
What daily habits or routines do you recommend to stay motivated and maintain focus?
The basics. I mean, starting with, you got work, cardio, weights, reading, YouTube, learning, ChatGPT, set example for your family. ChatGPT, by the way, is who I'm being interviewed by, which is kind of fun and exciting. Like, it really just kind of opens my brain, prompting it to ask questions and then answering the questions. It actually feels really good. It's like I'm doing weightlifting in my brain. But like I said, you either break everything down to your tiniest thing. There's different aspects of running, cardio, and what it does for your body, which I think brings clarity to if your body's an antenna in the quantum responsive universe. Running, like, your still mind brings stillness in order to create space for stuff to enter it. Running creates clarity and like pumps out your system and makes the antenna really clean and efficient. And then weightlifting is good for your brain, as it turns out, but it's also creates higher amperage for your antenna to be like stronger and pumping out more stuff. And you see it on the metaphysical level, but also the freaking primate ape level, is which we're all still functioning in. And it helps to keep yourself. That's where Icarus went up and up and up and up, but wasn't grounded. I wasn't grounded, and my head was purely in the clouds and not grounded to, I don't know, Mother Earth, you could call it. Primate deep sexuality, I guess you could say, which is where we're all at, So work, cardio, weights, reading. In the last 6 months, I've been trying to do a lot more reading, and it's been good to just not look at the phone, not look at YouTube. Though YouTube is really amazing for looking for exactly what you want to look. The algorithm. There's so much information out there. I mean, that's my problem, is I work all day with earmuffs. What I'm doing, I'm always listening to podcasts. I'm like, my brain is like so much information percolating. It's like almost overload. But it's my choice, so I deal with it.
What has been the most rewarding experience you've had while working with clients or viewers?
I really like getting letters and comments from subscribers saying just whatever, like how cool they think something is or how they got some information. Like I've gotten a lot of doing some long mountain run through some crazy ridge line, and then someone's being like, oh, I saw your video, I wanted to go do that same route, so I saw where you went. Oh, that was cool. So it was super cool to like literally tread the digital path and then create room for someone to follow you, which was on top of, like, for years, I don't know, 5-6 years I was doing trail building, downhill bike trail building specifically. And that was the coolest thing, to like build a trail with banks and berms and jumps and stuff, which was my brain putting it out into the dirt. And then anyone who ever came down that trail then had to go through what my brain told them to go through. I was like, you guys are going to go here. It's like being an author of a book and bringing them on a story. Left, right turn, jump, turn, drop, da 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 da. Like, you were writing the story for them to follow. And that was pretty satisfying.
How do you stay motivated to continue your work, especially when dealing with setbacks or challenging cases?
You have to learn to look at failures as chance to learn. Again, reduce the smallest part. Yeah, so like I said, I did this Icarus thing literally 20 years ago, and it's felt like it's been 20 years of like the principles I learned back then. I knew them. Like, these are the freaking rules. Like, that's one thing. You can like know the rules of the sport. You can know the rules of hockey or baseball or football, but you might not be very good at it. Like, you're still getting thrown out at first. You're still striking out. So I basically did that. I learned the rules, which they've all held true, but I didn't know how to play the game. And it's taken 20 years of like just grinding. I feel like I'm coming out this like poof, to where I can even be sitting here talking here with any sort of clarity.
Who are the people, books, or philosophies that have influenced your teachings the most?
I mean, originally I remember my first ski hero was this guy, Jeremy Novus, as they would come to Alaska, and he was the first guy on fat skis to like shred the mountains like super high speed, like, because previously it was like skinny skis and people would like chop around and it was cool and like skiing was still fun, but no one knew what fat skis could do. And he was the first one to come out, and this was in 1998, right when I graduated high school and right when I moved to Girdwood to obsessively compulsive skiing. I got the same fat skis he had, and I was like, oh my god. So all I wanted to do was ski like him, and he was in terms of like big mountain fast skiing. And then my buddy I'd met at the same time, named Fred Bull, he was an endurance guy for ski mountaineering. So we would like long days in the mountains. Like, that's who I was like power drinking with and power climbing mountains with. Like, it was just such a go like in the dark. Like, people have never been to Alaska. Like, people know Alaska like the spring and summer, yay, but there's long dark periods where you've got to create your own motivation. Like, the weather is not going to motivate you in itself. Other person, my best friend at the time, Abe Joffre, that's who I met in high school when I was like 16. And we were both just like, let's go to the mountains. And that was just endurance. We just go every single day. I had this like sweet spot, a couple summers where like I had a car, I was barely working, had zero responsibilities or payments of money. I could live off $100 a week, basically, still living at home in high school. And we just maximized our time in the mountains. Like, it's amazing that I lived, actually, in retrospect. And I think back, if I were to have my kids, I'm like, oh my god, like, what were we doing? Like, thank god my parents let me have some leeway, in retrospect. But all those people are dead now, interestingly enough. I don't know what that means, but some good books. I've been reading all the Robert Greene 48 Laws of Power, then The Mastery, and the War. I'm reading it right now. He's just got such in-depth insight on stuff. I've also read a bunch. I've kind of gotten out of it because it's so depressing. A lot of old World War II stuff, or what was that? A People's Tragedy, the Tonga Bomb. You read this World War shit and you're just like, ooh, things could be so bad. And that's part of the visualizing your happy future, is your little brain is like creating this little bubble of sanctuary around all this, like, and there's the thinnest veneer of civilization covering everything. And when you see that thin veneer, and you're like, oh my god, like, this is just a fucking illusion that anything's even working. Like, and you imagine the technology behind anything to make anything, and if you lost it all, like, I don't know anything. Like, when you realize that, the most staunch libertarian attitude is completely, unless you're actually living in a cabin in the woods with meat and berries You literally are stuck with what everyone else is doing, like watching the banking collapse happening right now and war and whatever. Yeah, it can stress people. It can stress you out.
Some people feel overwhelmed by the sheer volume of self-help advice available today. How do you address this issue, and what sets your approach apart?
I like to boil things to the basics. Hard work plus good attitude goes a long way. I like to. It's something I found I did naturally. It was like if you're plugging along doing something, you're at work or you're climbing a mountain or whatever, it'd be easy to fall in, like, not melancholy, but just like, man, okay, whatever. But the second things got like sketchy or like it got dangerous or the weather got real bad, like I'll take either like a sunny bluebird day or a raging storm day, but you get the middle gray in between. You're like, man, it's just kind of gray and kind of shitty. I'd rather a raging storm be going on, which intrinsically seems less good, but it makes you feel more alive because you see the power of everything. And I know I feel like I have the ability. I step it up when things get weird or sketchy, or I'll see other people getting tired or burnt out. Or you're at work, and I feel like if you're the one that can turn around and crack the joke to lighten the mood, that's good. A good skill to have. And it's easiest to start things, I think, in the physical stuff. You go from physical to the mental to emotional to financial. They kind of carry through each other because you see a lot of people, they'll gain financial freedom, but they haven't done any of the basics under the pyramid. They're at the top of the pyramid, so to speak, but they don't have any basics for why they should be happy or acknowledging their psychological freedom.
What's your perspective on people who are resistant to change, even though they desire personal growth?
It's easy to say if you say it fast. It sounds easy if you say it fast. I mean, that's the thing. Like, people, if you start on something, like, you start running from scratch, you have the low-hanging fruit is where it's easy to get faster for effort. You're like, oh, I'm faster now, faster now, faster now. But then over time, it might be years later, it's the law of diminishing returns where you're like, da, 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 and you're going to plateau. Like, I've kind of plateaued in my running ability in terms of top speed, but I've got better on the longer game with patience and whatnot. But in order to, like, say my PR on the half marathon is 120, if I were to try to get 118 or 115, what? That's a huge jump. Where if I had started, it would have been like 2 hours, 240, 245, 230. You're taking minutes off as you do it, as you get into it. Now I would have to like do some crazy efforts to take 2 minutes off. So you have your diminishing returns in that regard. So that would be the advice, is to just start. You're going to feel good. And then by the time you're getting to the problem of a law of diminishing returns, you've already created enough discipline to like push through it or adapt, right? I mean, the first step's the hardest.
In the age of social media and constant comparison, how do you help people stay focused on their own personal progress?
Well, it's true. Comparison is the thief of joy. You have to run your own race, but you still want to know where your competitors are. You still want to know what the bar is set. Where's the bar set in whatever you're doing? Like, you got levels of like financial freedom, $10,000 a month. Like the bar, if you hit that, yay, you're at least that's the first level essentially. And then you watch these people like $1 million a month or 100,000 a month to $1 million or 10 million, right? I can make $1 million a month, and I could still feel poor to the dude who makes 10 million a month, right? Like, how far are you going to chase it? Or if I make 10,000 a month now, that's freaking rich compared to what I used to make. I used to do like, we'd live off $1,000 a month. It's crazy when I think back, but we had lower expenses and less inflation and whatever. But it's like this constant relative thing. And if you realize that you're constantly relative on this imaginary freaking infinite scale, you might as well just enjoy where you're at least feel good about it. But then also realizing you want to create your own bubble, your own little sanctuary. And that's what I honestly feel like. Like, the world's going to shit apparently, but they always say it's going to shit. So I like to stay informed, but I also don't stress over it anymore. Because I literally feel like I'm in my own bubble, and I visualize myself like, people are like, oh, the middle class is shrinking, and like the upper class and the lower class or whatever, they're shrinking and taking the middle class, and I feel like I'm on a tether that's just throwing a grappling hook up to the upper class, and it's just barely hooked on there as it's pulling away, like the blimp is pulling away from the like boiling masses. That's my visualization process. Hanging off a Gatling hook with my little family, and we're like, oh my god, we're gonna make it.
Where do you see the future of the self-mastery industry going, and what role do you hope to play in it?
Um, People need to stay grounded in the real world, and that's why I'm such a strong advocate for hard and or dangerous physical activities, because it grounds you into the moment and it grounds you to reality. Politics aside, it's a lot of hearsay and a lot of conjecture and a lot of assumptions and a lot of imaginariness that brings you stress that you really really don't know. Like, that's the thing. Like, you can pretend you know everything, like I'm good at doing, but in the end, if you're not in the room with the person who said the thing, there's no way to really know anything. You really don't know anything except what the media is telling you in that regard. That's what you really know anything. Um, All I know is like, oh, I'm sitting here. Oh, my coffee's about empty, and I'm getting tired of talking. That's what I know. Um, Blood, sweat, tears can be cathartic. So what am I doing to remedy? Well, I'm starting this running retreat thing, which I'm really just keen to. I'm starting it for free, basically, because I feel the urge or need to connect with people like on the same page. So I'm creating this business to connect with people on the same page who are just like down to earth, want to freaking die of heat stroke and then go swimming. Like, that's one of the purest happy things. Like, I've got these two extremes. I love shredding the giant mountainside in the cold frosty winter, and then I want to die of heat stroke in the barren lava coast of Hawaii. Like, they're kind of opposite, but I love both ends of it. And the other thing I'm doing here in a couple months, I'm doing a hosting ski movie dance party. Actually, just making a party, throwing a party, and it's all going to be for charity. Not going to make any money off it. Bring a DJ in, just have a big old bash, and throw a bunch. I got a bunch of art and a bunch of skis to auction away. So that should be pretty fun. Just trying to connect with people in real life versus the goddamn internet.
What are your future goals or projects in helping more people on a larger scale?
I'm just going to keep going. You don't really, like, I know kind of where I want to be. I want to be tanned and fit and wealthy. Boom. That's my, like, Z. If I had subject A through Z, Z is the goal. So I'm just kind of filling in the gaps of how to get there. I just want to keep dialing in my scene, because the more I can dial in my scene to make myself better, the more effective I can be in, like, hey guys. And I've always, ever since I was like 16, had the attitude, look guys, you can do it too. Like, because I was just me and my friend. We're freaking 16 years old, didn't know anything. And we'd just park the car and just march up a mountain. We didn't have beacons or avalanche shovels. We knew nothing. And we just went and did it. And did it and did it and did it. You do it so much until you've got the experience, and then you're like, holy cow, I can't believe we didn't kill ourselves doing that. But anyone can do it. Just pull the fucking car and start walking. There it is. It's like, it's easy if you say it fast.
If you could give one piece of lasting advice that would resonate long after the interview, what would it be?
One of my favorites is my friend Abe. He actually had it on a t-shirt. I don't know where he got the t-shirt, but it was a picture of a skier tucking, and it said, go faster and faster until the thrill of speed overcomes the fear of death. And it just really stuck with me on creating your own momentum. Like, it's such a cool, it's like, I could almost see it as like a math equation. Faster and faster until the thrill of speed, like, you're like, this momentum, and the thrill of speed kicks in, and then douche, the thrill of speed overcomes the fear of death. Like, you're no longer afraid of death, and you're just like flying like the speed of light. But if I were to add to that, I've really enjoyed the be it before you can see it, which is embracing the identity of the person you want to be before you might actually be that person, but convincing yourself you're just tricking yourself. And that's where the fake it till you make it, it's kind of like that. But fake it till you make it, you're trying to trick someone else into being something, where be it before you see it, you're trying to trick yourself. So they're similar but different. And then finally, stop striving, start arriving, which runs contrary to everything I just said. But it goes in conjunction with the be it before you see it. You gotta, like, arrive in this place. You can just be in the place. It's like this, it's like a chicken or the egg thing. You just have to be it, bro, before you see it. Seems simple, right? Anyway, thanks for the questions, ChatGPT. This was fun. We'll do it again.